People were living their lives in peace on Earth, not realizing that a storm was suddenly rising beyond the stars. When extraterrestrial ships emerged in the sky, their technology was completely different from that of humans. Had ever witnessed the first panic quickly, sleek, huge, and terrible? Changed to fear when the extraterrestrial generals' transmissions started to play globally. Speaking through sophisticated translation systems, they mocked humanity's call and issued a terrifying message. Earth was theirs. These invaders believed they were superior in every aspect, despite their crude weapons and ridiculous warriors. The extraterrestrial overlords didn't just come to conquer, they came to ensure that no opposition could stand in their way, humiliate them by playing looping videos of unsuccessful counterattacks on every screen. The extraterrestrial commanders laughed and sneered as they called Earth's defenders toy soldiers, and their guns as pyrotechnics, and for a while their haughtiness was evident. They appeared to be justified in their derision, as planes dispatched to combat them easily intercepted missile strikes, were destroyed before they could even reach Earth's most sophisticated technology, which appeared archaic in contrast to the world's greatest thinkers. The military hurried to react, and formerly divided nations united in desperation, but unity was insufficient. Every attempt to retaliate was met with the extraterrestrial ships hovered over crucial areas, wreaking havoc and causing a crushing defeat. People started to feel humiliated as their generals challenged Earth's leaders to try harder. To lose hope in the midst of the pandemonium? Wondering if submission was the only way out, distinguished himself from the others by not being a politician or a general, nor did he lead armies. He was an isolated individual who had nothing left to lose. Tragic events shaped his past, and his survival abilities were refined through years of severe settings as the brightest minds in the world discussed tactics. He noticed he observed trends that the haughty aliens didn't bother to conceal, and he saw chances that others had written off as impossible. But this man didn't plan on quitting up because he thought there was always a method to retaliate, regardless of how hopeless the circumstances appeared. While some argued that began to organize, his resolve attracted the interest of a few like-minded others who were together, engineers, scientists, and warriors who had not yet given up hope, started developing a solution, despite the fact that many people didn't think it would defeat the aliens. Self-assured, they proceeded with their campaign of destruction. Cities were easily leveled, and the alien generals took great pleasure in their triumphs and their increasingly vicious taunts, which made them think that Earth and its inhabitants were weak. Unable to mount a serious defense, they did not perceive the man and his little group as a danger to themselves, because humans were already defeated. As the man's scheme came to fruition, rumors started to circulate, and some people disregarded the news of a last-ditch attempt to make a fight against the invaders as desperate, but others held on to it as a ray of hope. And the man's determination motivated everyone around him. He was battling to demonstrate that humanity would not be ridiculed or destroyed, not only to survive. The alien generals, overcome with conceit, saw the increasing opposition and dismissed it, making fun of the concept. They sent out other communications, claiming that a single guy in a motley crew may be a threat to their dominion. Their pathetic efforts were only another example of humanity's folly. They thought they would win because it was a given, but this man wasn't going to give up. He realized that brute force wouldn't prevail in this conflict if he tried to match the aliens' technology or battle them on their terms. Rather, he depended on strategy, creativity, and knowledge of his opponent's conceit. He saw their behaviors, their flaws, and their overconfidence when others perceived an insurmountable adversary. He used weaknesses to take advantage of the growing pressure while everyone else waited. The authorities of Earth became more and more desperate as the alien generals proceeded to make fun of the guy, and despite the fact that time was running out and resources were limited, his party persevered despite the innumerable obstacles they faced. by an unwavering conviction that one person with a strong will may change things as the day of reckoning approached. The extraterrestrials, ready for what they saw as a simple formality, believing that their supreme power would destroy this last act of rebellion because they failed to recognize the human spirit's tenacity. They couldn't understand that the man understood the odds were stacked, but their derision had strengthened their resolve. He was aware of the likelihood of failure against him, but he also understood that giving Earth needed someone to confront the alien generals and demonstrate to them that humanity was not an option. He bowed to the big master in Earth world and relented to subject himself to her rule. He wasn't merely battling to survive, but also to demonstrate that the Earth's warriors, who were ridiculed and denigrated, were capable of greatness. When the scene was arranged, the extraterrestrial generals thought they would see the end of humanity, shame unaware that they were going to encounter a man who had transformed their haughtiness into their biggest vulnerability. The plan was daring and unlike anything Earth had ever tried, risky, and very impossible to trust the individual who came up with and understood that the speed and might of the alien invaders' technology prevented humanity from defeating them using traditional methods. Far more than Earth could directly oppose, and rather than concentrating on brute force, the strategy depended on taking use of the one thing the aliens had failed to see was their conceit, which led to their recklessness, and the main focus of the plan was timing and accuracy, which the man intended to exploit against them. The fleet operated on the premise that no one could get past their defenses because their ships were connected by a complex cybersecurity network, which ship depended on the others in the communication and power distribution network to sustain the fleet's overall efficiency. The system was flawless until someone found a weakness in it. The man understood that a deliberate attack on a single node inside this network could result in a disastrous chain reaction that disables the entire. The aliens didn't even bother to defend the fleet because they thought it was inaccessible. Finding the precise location of the key node was the first difficulty because it couldn't be seen with the unaided eye or even with the best surveillance equipment on Earth. The man collaborated with a few specialists to determine the alien spacecraft's patterns by analyzing each movement and energy beam. Each signal they sent was examined, and gradually the parts fit together. And the team located the target, which was concealed deep within the alien fleet and encircled by layers of defenses. It would take talent, accuracy, and an extraordinary amount of courage for defenses to reach the second challenge, was determining how to deliver the strike because Earth's armaments couldn't even get to the node, let alone cause. The man and his squad had to make do with whatever damage was required to destroy it, recovered extraterrestrial technology from downed spacecraft, and started developing a weapon that could get past the fleet's defenses. By extraterrestrial standards, the technology was rudimentary, yet it was sufficient to complete the task. Failure was not an option. Thus, each component of the weapon had to be tested and retested. The third challenge was carrying out the attack. But the alien generals weren't slowing down as the clock was ticking. Plan. The individual realized that this was neither an army mission or a major strike. Force it needed to be precise and stealthy, which only a tiny squad could accomplish, yet even his closest of many allies were hesitant because of the enormous dangers. Failure would imply not merely death as well as the total destruction of humanity, but the man's unwavering determination motivated a few people to join him. They weren't traditional troops, but they were resourceful, talented, and the man, who was prepared to risk all for Earth's survival, moved at a relentless pace, relentlessly reviewing every aspect of the strategy with his crew. Scenario: the alien generals considered every possible source of failure. Unaware of the escalating danger, they persisted in disparaging humanity's endeavors by broadcasting messages of contempt. These comments, which described Earth's final stand as a pitiful show of despair, only strengthened the man's resolve, because he knew the final days before the mission were difficult because he wanted the aliens to regret underestimating him. Due to scarce supplies and overextended resources, the team had a setback. Despite setbacks, they persisted and overcame each challenge with creativity. and grit. The weapon was eventually finished, and the group tested it using simulations to be sure it would function. Entirely practical. These comments, which described Earth's final stand as a pitiful show of despair, only strengthened the man's resolve, because he knew the final days before the mission were difficult because he wanted the aliens to regret underestimating him. Due to scarce supplies and overextended resources, the team had a setback. Despite setbacks, they persisted and overcame each challenge with creativity and grit. The weapon was eventually finished, and the group tested it using simulations to be sure it would function. Entirely practical. If they didn't hit the node exactly, the fleet would strike back. The alien generals, still assured of their supremacy, observed heightened activity with unfathomable force among people, but they disregarded it as pointless, since they were so confident that they failed to see the danger. They thought humanity was too weak and disjointed to put up a serious fight against this. The man was depending on arrogance, since he knew that as long as people didn't think too highly of Earth, they wouldn't approach it, someone else would see. As the mission day drew near, the team braced themselves for what they knew might be a one-way journey and anticipated his next move. Despite being completely aware of the risks, each member decided to move forward for them. This was about demonstrating that humanity wasn't as helpless as the aliens thought they wanted, not just about surviving. To demonstrate to the alien generals that Earth was a resilient planet rather than a collection of archaic species. Tenacity and inventiveness. The idea was straightforward in theory, but extremely intricate in practice. The group would deliver the weapon straight to the node by infiltrating the heart of the alien fleet and navigating through several levels of defense. The alien ships functioned with exact timing and synchronization at every stage, with such efficiency that any deviation from the plan could not be tolerated. Result in instant identification and failure. This approach was unique in that it relied on the aliens' own technology via subscriptions into the system. Without, the aliens couldn't readily counter the strike by utilizing their systems against them. Was intended to target the systems that supported the fleet rather than destroying it with pure force. Together, the objective was to completely destroy the aliens' advantage rather than engage in combat on their terms. Tuka stayed committed, motivating his group and making sure they were prepared for the work at hand. There was no space for uncertainty or error. With hesitation, each person played a distinct role and the aliens were counted every second. Despite having better technology, the man and his group had something much more significant, a sense of surprise. With an unwavering will to succeed, in the last seconds before the mission, the man paused to think. He was doing this for the many lives that depended on their support, not for fame or recognition. Achievement? The world had given up on him, and his team's defeat wasn't an option. Not because of pride, but rather because of the gravity of the situation. The mission was prepared to start. The man and his group were aware that every preparation had to be made because there was no going back. The odds were stacked against them, and their decision had brought them to this point where they were going to face the impossibility. However, they brought the hope of a whole planet with them, and they planned to make it matter. The alien generals might have made fun of our warriors, but they were going to get a hard lesson about how to underestimate humanity. Started with a methodical strategy, and the group proceeded with accuracy, realizing that each extraterrestrial fleet functioned flawlessly in unison, yet their overconfidence created small gaps that were the only way for this plan to succeed. Taking advantage of the aliens' conviction that no amount of human effort could overcome their defenses, the first move was to go around the outer tiers of the alien fleet, which meant negotiating a complicated network of automated defenses, patrols, and sensors. Every action was planned, and the extraterrestrial ships were always watching for dangers, yet their systems were designed to identify large-scale assaults rather than sporadic, focused infiltration. The team used advanced stealth tactics, many of which were modified from the aliens. Therefore, this oversight was crucial. The alien generals were not aware that they could use their own technology to evade discovery. Ongoing operation, they continued to concentrate on Earth's battling opposition, which they saw as a more substantial danger. The team's ability to go undetected was evidence of their preparation and discipline. Making the right choice was crucial because even a minor error may notify the aliens and cause the mission to end abruptly once inside. The team encountered fresh difficulties as the alien ships communicated with the fleet's perimeter through a very sophisticated network, and any interference could set off alarms that the mission's leader had foreseen. This made certain that each piece of gear was made especially to fit in with the alien systems. By using this strategy, they were able to penetrate farther into the fleet, without giving away that the alien fleet was well organized. The most important parts were concealed in plain sight and shielded against heavy objects in a manner that demonstrated their confidence. Defenses, but the team was able to do so because of their conceit, thinking no one could reach them, to make their way through the maze of ships and arrive at the aliens' HFY, which proved to be their downfall as they received the Trojans and correctly locked the labyrinths in VI, and had exposed their vital systems to an unorthodox attack, making it necessary to not only approach the node technical proficiency, as well as knowledge of the aliens' behavior, as seen by their predictable movements. The team took advantage of the patterns that had been thoroughly examined throughout the planning stage. On these trends, arranging their activities to align with times when the fleet's focus was diverted, they were able to approach the node undetected thanks to their exact coordination. The alien's heart was located at the center of the node. Fleet's operations, it was the intersection of power and communication. And turning it off would the fleet making their advanced technology ineffective, but it was also, the node was encircled by a steady stream of energy, making it the most hazardous aspect of the expedition. Any disruption may potentially disastrous outcomes. The mission's leader was aware of the dangers, but stayed concentrated on the goal of success, which calls for flawless weapon execution. Produced for this voyage was unique to Earth. It combined human ingenuity with extraterrestrial, delivering it to the node using technology designed especially for this purpose was the last phase, and it required complete precision in the timing of the battle. Because the weapon had to be activated precisely when the node's defenses were triggered, the deployment was crucial, were at their most vulnerable, and the tension was evident as the team took their positions. Every move was well thought out, and each choice had significant consequences. The alien fleet carried on with its operation, unaware of the danger to the team's capacity to stay hidden. Was the fact that they were conducting operations in the center of the enemy stronghold, surrounded by their own people. The last moments of the mission were a test of resolve as the team cooperated under constant threat. The person carrying out their duty with accuracy, the mission leader remained focused despite knowing that their ability to carry out the plan perfectly and deploy the weapon with careful attention to detail was crucial to their success. Once the activation procedure started, the alien generals, who were still sure of their supremacy, were not aware of the actual threat. As the attack progressed, their conceit prevented them from seeing the likelihood of failure. Their worst flaw was overconfidence. The team's actions were the result of months of planning and design decisions made during the emergency treaty, and they were able to take advantage of the aliens' blind areas. Because the weapon activated, the aliens' fleet started to weaken. The core node was interrupted, leading to a series of system failures. The fleet, which had previously represented invincibility, was consequently invincible. The alien generals were taken by surprise and struggled to comprehend the chaos. Their flawless coordination was destroyed, and their superiority was no longer a benefit. After completing the impossible, the guy and his group used the aliens' own conceit against them. Managing their fleet from inside, the mission's success demonstrated the strength of resiliency, inventiveness, and Determination, it demonstrated that humanity could defeat the aliens despite enormous odds. The generals who had made fun of Earth troops now had to face their own shortcomings because their fleet was damaged. Plans in ruins. The man's deeds had kept humanity alive and transmitted a strong message to the invading ERS, in spite of their superior technology and haughtiness, were not unbeatable. They had misjudged the power of a resolute populace, and that their poor decision had cost them dearly. And the aliens were taken aback by the abrupt interruption. Swiftly regrouped, their fleet's supposedly impregnable systems were now chaos, and disarray replaced the smooth coordination they had depended on. And the generals who discovered a danger they had never foreseen after dismissing Earth's resistance as futile. Although there were desperate attempts to restore order, the damage was too great to be reversed in a short amount of time. The war was far from over after the first strike, and the aliens still had advanced weapons and a numerical advantage. Desperate to restore control, they started using their remaining soldiers in a retaliatory effort. They concentrated their efforts on separating and getting rid of the man and his group, since they thought that doing so would permit a speedy recuperation. But the man had expected this reaction and designed the mission with backup plans to make sure the team wouldn't be easily surrounded by the alien generals. Unaccustomed to dealing with hardship, they found it difficult to modify their tactics and instead turned to brute force and technical superiority. But the man's attack had jeopardized both, revealed a major weakness in their strategy. Their incapacity to function well under pressure because of their haughtiness had left them hotly on edge. They were caught off guard as they frantically attempted to stop the events that were taking place. Despite being greatly outnumbered, the man and his crew persisted in making progressively unpredictable decisions during the crisis. The disarray inside the alien fleet gave them opportunity to gain an advantage that would have been impossible if not for the free force. Every choice was made to maximize disruption because it would be impossible in regular circumstances. The team's unrelenting focus was motivated by the notion that further disrupting the enemy's efforts to regroup, the extraterrestrial generals realized that their success could decide humanity's fate. When their fleet was about to capsize, they tried to bolster their forces and gave orders to leave. This withdrawal was a teasid because they were able to concentrate their power around important strongholds and take less crucial positions. Disclosure of their vulnerability, which stands in sharp contrast to their prior assurance. That was a last-ditch effort to save what was left of their once dominant fleet as the alien troops withdrew. Their chaos grew more apparent, and their communications were untrustworthy. The fleet, which had functioned as a single, cohesive body, had uneven unit coordination. The generals are still clinging to their scattered pockets of resistance, refused to acknowledge that their situation was deteriorating by the minute due to their sense of dominance. The man changed his approach to take advantage of the aliens' retreat after realizing that the dynamics were changing. Instructed his group to target the remaining strongholds, paying particular attention to regions where the aliens had gathered the enemy's capacity to reorganize. The enemy's capacity to reorganize was further undermined by these focused attacks, leaving them open to further attacks. The man's strategy was unrelenting, taking advantage of every vulnerability with accuracy and effectiveness. The fact that they had underestimated their predicament, and now the fleet once again was left with very little options. While they might be the most important species on the planet, now an unstoppable force was in ruins. The harm was irreversible, and the fact that they had underestimated their opponent was a tough pill to swallow, as their options were limited. They were now suffering the consequences of their conceit, which had prevented them from seeing the possibility of defeat. In their despair, the generals held on to the hope that their technology might still allow them to. An advantage, even as they authorized a last full-scale attack as their supplies were running low, using all available resources in a final effort to overcome the opposition. This daring move was eventually futile. The man and his group had expected such kind of reaction and were ready to fight it in the last. The alien generals were rendered incapacitated by their own swift and decisive confrontation. Overconfidence prevented them from successfully defending their fleet after a sign of invincibility was diminished to strewn about remains of what the guy had changed the course of the conflict, demonstrating that resourcefulness and willpower could overcome conceit and authority. The battle's conclusion shocked the alien ranks. The once powerful invaders who had made fun of human fighters were now compelled to withdraw. Efforts had broken the illusion of the aliens' invulnerability and saved humanity. It was a triumph that would serve as a tribute to the resilience of the human spirit and the strength of determination for generations to come. A profound sense of failure replaced the arrogance of the defeated and humiliated alien generals as they withdrew into the emptiness. They lost everything because they misjudged their opponent. The man's victory served as a reminder that even the highest rates are only matches against the known human being. With bravery, ingenuity, and a determination to persevere, even the most strong opponents may be defeated in the aftermath of the Earth has been stretched to its limits. But it had survived the alien invasion. The fight was a mixture of relief and introspection. Once an unstoppable force, the fleet was now a collection of defeated people. All throughout the world rejoiced in the invasion, something many had thought was impossible. Axe had given humanity a fighting chance, and his accomplishments demonstrated that ingenuity and resiliency might triumph. Rebuilding took precedence over even the most daunting odds. Massive cities were reduced to rubble as a result of the alien attack. Despite the destruction, which had upended millions of lives and severely devastated infrastructure, there remained a pact of resolves. People came together with a renewed sense of resolve and hope to mend what had been destroyed, united by the knowledge thought they had overcome extinction, and that their unity was a direct consequence of the man's inspired efforts. The alien generals had faith in humanity's capacity to triumph over hardship. Now, ashamed and degraded, they withdrew into the depths of space. Their sense of superiority had been dashed, and the loss was a watershed moment for humanity, as well as the invaders' once uncontested supremacy had been called into doubt, and they now had to face the fact that their downfall was the result of their arrogance. The loss affected not only their military performance, but also their self-perception. People began to widely acknowledge the man's contribution to the victory as an unstoppable force on Earth. Though he was hesitant to accept the moniker, people from all walks of life praised him as a hero. Because the conflict had never been about his own glory, he had always prioritized making sure that the gratification of knowing that his efforts were appreciated came before the recognition of survival, had a significant impact, and that humanity had learned from the conflict. After the invasion revealed vulnerabilities that could no longer be disregarded, countries started funding cooperative initiatives. Scientists and engineers put out endless effort to reverse engineer the remains of the planet in order to enhance its defenses. Extraterrestrial technology, looking for methods to transform their enemies' innovations into instruments for Earth's defense. The hope believed that by doing this, humanity would never be caught off guard again. The man's activities also spurred a wider discussion of flexibility and resilience, as well as his capacity for unconventional thinking and challenge. In the face of insurmountable obstacles, traditional methods became a model for problem solving. His narrative was shared extensively as a story of bravery and a lesson of what is possible when willpower combining creativity. The battle's legacy reached beyond Earth. Aliens who were currently tending to their wounds were compelled to reconsider their strategy after their failure had shown the risks of underestimating their rivals. And the humiliation of their loss made a deep impression. Their retreat signaled a change in the balance of power and should serve as a warning to any future conquest attempts, since Earth had demonstrated its ability to withstand even the most powerful assaults. Additionally, the victory gave humanity a fresh sense of identity. The invasion had brought people together in a way that few historical occurrences ever had. Boundaries and contrasts were ignored in the face of shared danger. And this solidarity endured throughout the regimes that followed. Individuals and organizations collaborated to restore not just the tangible structures, but also the confidence and support of the people itself. For the man, the conclusion of the conflict was an opportunity to consider the cooperation that had been established during the crisis, had overcome unfathomable obstacles and triumphed, but the toll of the battle was high. Lost, the devastation he saw, and the weight of responsibility were not things he relished. Remaining unfazed, he saw the win as a starting point and a basis for humanity to build upon. Create a future in which these dangers may be confronted with even more vigor and readiness. By using the lessons learned from the conflict, served as a sobering reminder of the significance of the invasion, which became ingrained in Earth's collective consciousness. Alertness, creativity, and solidarity demonstrated that even in the face of overwhelming power, one could always fight back. The man's actions demonstrated that one person's willpower could motivate a whole planet to overcome the obstacles as humanity advanced to the present. The bodily reconstruction was accompanied by a feeling of emotional healing as the invasion's scars started to heal. The terror and hope and pride replaced the hopelessness that had engulfed the world, as the man's victory demonstrated that even the most hopeless times could result in fresh starts, and this conviction eventually formed a pillar of the reconstruction effort. Narrative became a representation of humanity's tenacity. His name was uttered with honor, his deeds were examined and honored, but he maintained his humility and kept his attention on the fact that his work was only a small part of a much bigger picture. Therefore, he thought that humanity's actual power came from the group rather than from individual bravery. Will to live and prosper, the conflict with the aliens turned into a pivotal point in human history. Man's significance as a reminder of the strength and fragility of life on Earth was indisputable at the time, but the triumph belonged to all of humanity. Together, they had defeated an unprecedented foe and come out stronger as a result. The invasion's legacy persisted well into the future, as evidenced by technological breakthroughs and the solidarity created in the face of crisis, and the knowledge gained from the conflict served as the cornerstone for a new era in which humanity was no longer a species. The man's efforts had made sure that the future was one worth pursuing, and the unsure was now full of possibilities. Struggling for